you can't scale. You can't do the things that are in your genius zone while you're doing everybody else's work. In order to really maximize your efforts, you have to be in the area that you're driving the business in.
If you're an entrepreneur who's built success but feels stuck in the grind, this podcast is for you. On the Live More Show, we give you short, powerful conversations to help you become more tax-savvy, time-rich, and totally free. Here's your host, Melanie Sikma.
According to the U.S. Department of Labor, a bad hire can cost a company up to 20 to 30% of that employee's first-year earnings, depending on what position they're in. This can easily mean tens of thousands of dollars lost, not even counting the owner's time and stress. If you're a business owner who's built a successful company but feels stuck in the day-to-day because everything depends on you or comes back to you, today's episode is going to be for you. My guest, Mike McCloskey, CEO of Humanlytics team, and one of the best people I personally know at helping people and business owners build the right vision, hire the right people, and create teams and systems that actually work. Mike's actually helped us at One Stop Tax Strategist and countless other companies stop guessing with their hiring, to get the right people in the right seats, and finally buy back their time. So today we're going to talk about how hiring, leadership, and clarity can help you step out of the weeds and use your business to create the life you love. Mike, we're going to jump right into it. You've helped leaders. Yes, of course. You've helped leaders, including myself, design the life that they love and building that out before they build the org chart. Why does that order matter so much? Why does it matter to get that clarity of what you want first?
Yeah, great question. We always start off with having a clear vision for two areas of their life. Really, one is how they want their life to be, because if they want to, spend the majority of their time having a lot of freedom, and they only want to work 25 hours a week, well, that's not going to work if they're building a business that's needing 80 hours a week of their time. So we do two things. We make sure we understand clearly what their life goals are, and what they want that to look like. And then, of course, their business vision as well. And without those two things, no matter how big your business gets, it's going to be chaotic because there's no clear vision. And so when you hire people, even if they're the right people, they're not going to know what the vision is because you can't even define it. So that's the number one priority for us, just to understand fully that you understand where you want to go. It's kind of like we do a sailing trip, quite a bit every year. We go on a different sailing trip and we have a great time. And then, if you don't know where you're going and you've got that rudder, steered just even 1 degree off where you want to be, you could literally land on another continent. So, it's imperative to know where you're going.
Yeah, for sure. I've heard that too. Like when people are flying, if you have just a slight degree off, it's crazy how far off it gets you.
That's right.
Now, when you're coaching a business owner who feels trapped, what's the first thing you do to help them get clarity?
Well, again, going back to the vision, that's the number one thing. Most of the time, I find that a company doesn't have, or the owner of the company doesn't really have a very good vision and understand really what they want out of the business. And so once we clarify that, then we start looking at, okay, what are the things that you're doing right now, and do they align with that vision? Most of the time they do not. And so that's really the cause of most confusion. And so we eliminate all of the things that don't help them run towards that vision very, very clearly, and align with their business objectives or their personal objectives, and help them understand what that vision is, even if we have to pull it out of them through a thing we call a vision extraction, which could take a few hours. We've done that with you, and several other people that that we've met over the years, and that's really, really helped. Sometimes just staying in that vision mode, that dream mode, so to speak. People have a very hard time because they're always thinking about processes and functions and procedures and things like that. They're not really talking about what they want those things to do for them in the long run.
Yeah. And I find too, like for myself, if you don't gain clarity on what you want, it's really easy to be told what you want by social media, or the world, right. A lot of other things. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
So it's super helpful to just keep coming back to that and have people that keep you accountable to that. So
that's right.
If you're not doing that as a listener, just definitely pull yourself out for just a couple days and figure that out.
Yeah,
Now,
and sometimes it takes a little bit longer. I didn't mean to cut you off.
that's okay.
Sometimes it takes a little bit longer depending on, how much clarity you had when you started the business or if you're about to start the business. The problem you made a great point that I want to kind of go back to. You were talking about, asking people and getting maybe some bad advice from people because a lot of people can tell you how to grow your business, but if it doesn't line up with what you're looking for, again, it's all useless advice. And so we just want to make sure that whatever we advise and whatever, the people that surround you to kind of motivate and influence you also have a clear understanding of what you're looking, so they can give you advice that lines up with that.
hmm Sometimes too, I've heard, and I think the Hermosi said this, so I don't want to take it from him, but
Okay.
he's basically the people that are closest to you sometimes give you the worst advice because they don't want to see you go through pain, and they
Right.
don't want to see you maybe mess up or whatever, and so they're afraid to take risks or have you take risks.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's good to have kind of a third party pull that out of you.
That's right. Yep. I know people that are in real estate and, all kinds of different businesses and, they get advice from somebody that, teaches them how to scale to 2 million, but their vision is only to be at 300,000. They just want a life that could, influence their friends and family and give them a little bit more free time to go do things with their kids, not to get sucked up into a business that, may take more of their time. They're very content. So some people want to do $20 million a month. Some people want to do 20 million a year, and all of those things are okay, and we'll help you get to that. But we just want to be clear on what you want. That's all.
Yeah. When I did it, I remember it was a lot less than I thought that it would be. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool to gain clarity on that. I'm actually doing that with my team right now. We're meeting with each of them
Good.
and we're getting clarity on what they want just in their career. And maybe it's not with us long term, but how can we help them achieve that through their work with One Stop? So
Love it. Very few leaders do that because they're afraid of losing somebody, and that actually brings on more loyalty than not. So congratulations. Hats off to you
oh,
for doing that with your team.
probably learned it from you.
Whatever. I'm glad it's working well for you. So.
Yeah. Now, did you ever have a moment in your own journey where you realized if I don't build this, meaning Humanlytics or your team, your business, what you do, intentionally, the business will take over my life? Or did you build it intentionally from the start?
I did not. Ironically, I did not build it intentionally from the start. Ironically, I teach people how to do that. But I came from the corporate world where there was a lot of structure and, full vision of understanding what you want, where you're going, all those different things. So I basically just taught and influenced another person's vision, right? And so I never had really created one from scratch. And so the problem with that is multiple things. But the initial problem that most people find is that they try to be everything to everybody and they chase a dollar instead of chasing the exact client that they're looking for, working with the exact client they're looking for, offering the things that they are best at offering. We had clients in the very, very beginning that said, "Hey, I'm so glad you do X. You also do Y." And we would say yes, because, we had done it in the past, but it really wasn't part of our offering. So we created a program around it to not say no, when really we should have just said no. Like, be an expert in the things you're an expert in and, be able to filter out the things you're not. That was the biggest learn for us, which quite honestly should not have been. There are things that we already knew. But again, in the beginning, when you're trying to,
Yep.
make money, you sometimes go after things you shouldn't. And so we eliminated that immediately after because I was stuck doing a role that I absolutely hated. So,
Well, that's really helpful. I've learned that myself too. And I always have to keep
yeah,
reminding myself.
that's right. Yeah.
Because you can then, if you're not all things to all people, then you can actually serve the people that you serve best better.
Yeah.
Like you're more
That's
open
right.
to be able to do that. So,
Right.
um, and then just find others that can help the people that you can't.
Yeah. Like McDonald's doesn't sell pizza or chicken wings. Just stay with what you're good at,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Yeah. Or,
exactly.
or some people think they're good at.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're going to move into some money moves. What's one hiring or leadership decision that you've seen instantly change profitability or owner time, whether for yourself or people that you've helped?
Sure. Well, most of our clients, the business owners have a really hard time giving up ownership of things, because you start off wearing every single hat. You've got no employees, maybe an admin type role in the very beginning. And so people say, well, I'm the business owner. I know all the ins and outs. I've got a lot of tribal knowledge that nobody else has. And so you bring somebody on to do some of the tasks that you think they might be good at, or you just don't want to do anymore. And we don't hand them off to those people, and we don't train, coach, develop them in order to do that. So we stay this kind of micromanaging mentality, as the business owner, and you're just going to really, really struggle if you continue with that, because you can't scale. You can't do the things that are in your kind of quote unquote genius zone while you're doing everybody else's work. And so that's the biggest thing I found, is that in order to really maximize your efforts, you have to be in the area that you're driving the business in, and have somebody else do all the things that are not necessarily driving business but are supporting the business, and that's a big gap. So in addition, to that, I also feel that oftentimes owners over hire for a particular role. So let's say someone says, we see this quite often. I need a general manager. And we say, okay, why do you need a general manager? Well, I need them to do these four things. Okay, well, you have 3 employees. What do you need a general manager over? What are they going to manage? What generally are they going to manage?
They just don't want to do it.
They just don't want to do it. Yeah. And then we find out what we really need is a person with 3 specific skills where they can do 5 tasks. And, it's a 15-hour-a-week job. It's not a 40-hour-a-week job. And so, we bring somebody in that's called a general manager, pay them more because they want the title and the money. And then we realize that profit is really struggling, and we're struggling to, keep up with clients, at a fast enough rate to pay this new person. So really analyzing the role, what they're going to be doing, that's the biggest detrimental thing I see people do in the beginning.
This is not a question that I thought we'd bring to, but it brought me to it, is how do you balance between abdicating and delegating? That's something that I really struggle with, because when I hire somebody, I just want to give it to them and almost then not look at it again. And
Right.
I've learned that that's not a good thing. So you need to delegate. How do you properly delegate without over managing or micromanaging, and then not also abdicate?
Sure. Well, there's 3 things that we look at when we are putting someone in a position. One, we look at their core values of a person, make sure that they are lining up with the core values of the company. So if you don't have core values for your company, you should really spend a few minutes to put those in writing. But you spend a few days or weeks creating them, and then make sure they're in writing, and actually put them in the job description and talk about them during the interview process. The other thing we look at is, of course, a person's resume, right? We want to make sure that they've got, if possible, some history, either in your industry or in the role specifically to what you're looking to hire for. If not, that could make a big difference in what your onboarding looks like. The third thing is we use a tool called Predictive Index, which I'm definitely want to talk about a little bit today, just because we spend a lot of time making sure we've got data on people to make sure they are a right fit. So what we do is we look at the drives of the person, and then also compare that to the drives of the role to make sure they're going to be a really good fit. And without looking at those 3 things together cumulatively, nothing in a silo, but everything together, we can be pretty positive that we're getting the right person. But if they don't have all of your tribal knowledge when they start, because just because I came from Burger King doesn't mean I know the McDonald's structure, right?
Yeah.
And so, for whatever industry we happen to be talking about, so we can't just leave somebody alone and just think, okay, well, they're going to get it by osmosis, and then expect to also micromanage them. Your goal with hiring them was to turn things over to them to do a job and give them some responsibilities, whether or not they're in a leadership role. They are leading their tasks, right? Or department, for example. So that's the biggest thing. You've got to make sure that you're saying, okay, I've got to spend some time with them. And it might take 20 hours in full time to kind of get that knowledge over to them and ongoing. But you're spending more than 20 doing the job you just hired them to do anyway. So you can always find time, to meet. So a lot of business owners say, I don't have time. We're just busy. you better find time because you're not going to grow if you're now still running 2 departments
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
having payroll, more payroll.
It's an investment into your time, your future time.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
kind of
then
like
you get
coaching, right? It's kind of like
uh
coaching where somebody says, "I don't have time to coach," but the people keep on your team keep making mistakes because they don't know what expectations are. Okay, well, you're either going to spend time coaching, or or you can spend time correcting issues later, and they're both going to be about the same amount of time. But just one is never ending. That's the
Yeah.
biggest problem. You know?
Yeah, all that stuff that you just talked about, you've helped us do in our hiring process, and it's been
Yeah,
so helpful. We have a rock star team, and
yeah, you do.
honestly, it's because of all the stuff that you've taught us. Now, I because you mentioned predictive index, I want to jump into that because that's been a
Sure.
really helpful tool for us. So, can you explain what it is and basically how it removes emotion and guesswork from hiring decisions?
Sure. So we've used it. I've used it for 15 years, and we're one of the country's biggest, offerers of predictive index. So it's been around since World War II. Actually, it's been around for a long time. We just kind of help create some of the reporting around it. So it's got 500 validity studies on it, and quite honestly, it's one of the couple of assessments that you can actually use for hiring, which is why most of our clients are so excited to use it because it can be legally used for hiring. So it's a 6-minute, incredibly easy assessment. I remember when you first took it, you thought, "This is it. This is
Yeah.
stupid. What are you going to get from this?" And so once we get the data from the 6-minute assessment, and by the way, there are literally no questions. It's insanely easy. And so once we get the data on that, it allows us to understand how a person is driven. So it actually looks at 4 drives. It looks at dominance, extroversion, patience, and formality. And those things allow us to find out, okay, now that we understand the levels of those 4 drives that a person has, what are the levels of those 4 drives that the job that they're applying for have? And do they line up, so to speak, kind of like overlapping with each other, perfectly? Or are they going to have to adapt a lot to fit in that role? Regardless of skill, this is not a skill thing. All right. And I'll explain that to you in just a second. But if their drives don't fit well with the job expectations, we know for a fact they have to adapt more. And when they adapt more, they use more energy. And so when they use more energy, they're just kind of mentally done at work around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the problem with that is they start blaming you as a leader for not being the right leader. They start blaming the culture. I don't like the company, all these different things when they just didn't realize they're not a good fit for the role. So
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. So a formality is the drive for, all kinds of data and information and rules and structure and things like that. So if I'm a bookkeeper, there's a lot of rules and structure and focus on, minute details, in that particular role. My formality is a little bit lower than average. Okay.
Yes, it is.
I've got to really kick that up a lot when I'm doing bookwork, when I first, bookkeeping work, when I very first started the company, before, I, brought someone on to do that. And so I'm good at it. If the world fell apart tomorrow and my business collapsed, I could be a bookkeeper anywhere and people would think I'm amazing at it. The problem is I hate it with a passion. So this is not a skill level thing. This is a how I'm driven and how I like to do work. So you might look at someone's resume and think, "Oh my gosh, this person's got 15 years of doing this." But you also notice they've done a lot of job hopping. They've gone from one job to the other, to the other, to the other. It's probably because they don't have the right drives for the job, even though they're skilled at it. So they think they're kind of stuck in that world of whatever job that might be because they're good at it, but they don't like it. And so they don't know how to get out. So they just keep applying for jobs in different places for doing the exact same role that they currently hate. So
Yeah.
that's why it's so important to have data. We've got KPIs, we've got, financial data, we've got all kinds of data on our business, but we don't have people data. And that's what we'll give you.
Yeah, and it's been so we had you come to share with our team about predictive index because we use that for our hiring, but then you talked about how that can affect how we interact with one another and
Right.
just the importance of knowing each other's PIs. And our team said that was so insightful for
Good.
them.
That
Not
was
to
a fun
only
day.
it was fun, yeah, and it's not only for them to know themselves, but it was very insightful for them to know how to talk to their teammates. So Anyways, yeah, if you're listening right now and you have never used Predictive Index, reach out to Mike and his team, and they can give you some really great help with it. Even when I start a team meeting, I think about, like, if we're getting feedback from the team, I know that there's going to be some dominant people, and so I'll call on the non-dominant people first because I want to get their input, because they, you said that they won't interrupt, they won't speak out, and so now I know to call on them. So
That's right. Yeah.
yeah.
Good. Yeah. We've got this thing called a relationship guide that tells you the differences and the similarities between two people. And so if there's friction between two people, Melanie can do this now. And we can also just say, hey, this is where the friction's coming from. We know exactly where it starts and how to fix it. And most people think we're actually sitting in their office half the time listening to conversations, because we're kind of like, can get in their brain a little bit in a good way to kind of help with things like that.
Yeah, it's super helpful.
Yeah.
Now, for a business owner that's netting maybe 500K or more, who wants out of the weeds, and what would the first rule that they should clarify on or redesign even before hiring? What would you think? Or does it just depend?
Yeah, great question. So first I'd want to define, what does out of the weeds mean? So sometimes if they're doing $500,000 plus, they've probably got a few team members. And so, there's a couple of reasons why they are generally in the weeds. One could be that they're not training their people well enough, and they're not sharing enough information with them. They're just expecting them to know everything through osmosis, apparently, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is they might have just hired the wrong people, which is, which does happen sometimes. And the other things, sometimes they're just a micromanager type of manager. They don't have the leadership skills yet. In order to kind of look at the bigger vision of the company, put themselves in the role they should be in, and then just hold people accountable to the job you've already trained them on. So it could be several different things. So we'll ask a lot of questions because we don't want to start, quote unquote, solving a problem that's not a problem. When we get an answer to one question, we want to understand what's the root cause of that, and what's the root cause of that, and what's the root cause of that. So we really truly understand what's going on, in their world, so we can answer that correctly. But it could be one of several different things.
Cool. Now, this kind of leads into an activity that you had me do. I wanted you to share can you describe the start, stop, delegate activity?
Sure. Yeah, so this is fun. So it's a little painful to do sometimes for people, but what we do is we have the owner put especially for smaller companies when they're trying to learn how to delegate better and figure out what should be delegated. We put on a whiteboard or flip chart all of the things that you are currently doing, and you need to list everything. It's really good to have somebody else in the room to kind of challenge you on it, because most of the time people miss 20 things, right?
Yeah.
So we want you to put everything on there, like for example, getting the mail, even running payroll, or doing bookkeeping, or selling to clients, or following up with clients. All of those different things, we need to have full details of written on a board. Then what we do and say, okay, so if you were in charge of some of those things, and we said you are 100% accountable for some of those things, I want you to only go up to that board and put your initials by the things that you would gladly take full ownership of. I mean, those are the things you have the will level to do, the skill level to do, and the capacity to do. So you have to have all three. So you got to have the will level, the skill level, and capacity to do all three. If you don't put your initials there. All right. So once we do that, we generally find that those pieces all fall into one category, like sales or operations or finances. We generally find that most of those have some kind of a theme around a department. Right. And so when you are trying to understand what to delegate, then we say, okay, now we've got this list of 50 other things that we don't have my initials next to. What are those things? Are they marketing? Are they financial? Are they whatever? And we say, okay, what would make the biggest impact on my company right now if somebody else took those tasks? And so then I say, okay, I can stay in the things, my genius zone, and the things that I'm passionate about, and the things that I really, really love doing. And so I know those are going to thrive because I'm really good at it. And now let's say it's financials, right? And I might say I need a bookkeeper and somebody to help me with the financials, maybe a part-time, CFO that can kind of just help me kind of give strategy. We'd reach out to a company, like you, and say, okay, how can you help me with all these, different, things that we're working on, or what would you recommend? And that's one thing off my plate. Now I've got an expert, right, helping me do those things that are not on my checklist, and then I'm doing the things I want to do. So that's where I would start 100% of the time. But those three things have to be yeses. So will, skill, and capacity.
Awesome. Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
And then I would also think now, okay, how many hours a week am I doing that? Right. So if I'm spending, 15 hours a week doing some of those skills, an expert might only need 10, somebody that's only focusing on that. So a lot of times people will say, okay, I'm going to hire a full-time person for this role. I'm like, what? Why? Like, just hire an expert for 10 hours a week, and they're so good at it and they're naturally gifted at it because we confirmed that with doing a PI or a predictive index, and they've got the skills and the resume and they line up with our core values. So let's get them to do it. They could probably do it in 7 hours because they're passionate about it and they love it. Right. Versus you struggling through your 15 hours of,
Yeah, I always tell people, like, especially with bookkeeping, because bookkeeping most entrepreneurs hate, and most of them are not good at it, even if they can get by. So it's like, what can you earn for your business in that amount of time? And if you just could delegate that, you could probably go make 10 sales instead of reconciling your books and hating your life.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah. We're so worried about, where sales are coming from. And yet we're sitting there, figuring out, in what category a certain expense falls into. Like, let somebody else do that,
Yeah, exactly.
You lost, to your point, you lost 5 sales during that time.
Yep. I was just talking to our team this morning because we had our all hands on deck meeting. And our mission at One Stop is to bring peace to taxes and purpose to profits to help you live more. And so I was just telling them, I'm like, I am like a lot of our clients, so just trust me when I say what you do is really helpful, because none of them want to do it. And it allows them to focus on their business and other things that are more important to them. So, and leading into that, we're going to jump into, we always do tax confessions, your financial wins, misses, and the lessons that helped you keep more of what you earn so you can live more. Our show is sponsored by One Stop Tax Strategist. So what's one tax or financial mistake that you made earlier in your career that you'd redo if you could?
Sure. Well, the answer I'm going to give is not specific.
Okay.
But it's more high level, and you're going to think I'm pandering a little bit. But it really is.
Open the closet.
It really is not having a really good tax strategy for my business prior to starting and really, really understanding how I can maximize all of the benefits of being a business owner. It's one of those things where I have had great calls, with you guys, and you've helped a lot, and it's just been tremendous. But it was one of those things where I did, 5 years after I started the company, and I go to a different tax preparer before, and they'd say, well, what about this? And we can do this, but they did just basic things, and because I didn't know what I didn't know until I actually spoke to someone that was an expert, right, in tax strategy, I felt kind of stupid for not really planning out what I wanted with that person who knew my current financial situation, where I wanted to be, when I wanted to retire, what I wanted my retirement to look like. All of those things come into play with every decision that you make, not just for the business, but for your own personal finances, and really, where you want the company to grow. Because it's kind of like, having a CFO, in your back pocket that you can kind of call on any time for advice, and it's been incredibly valuable. And I just regret going from employed to self-employed, many years ago, to not doing that in the very beginning and just having that part of my operations to begin with.
Yeah. There's some people that I talk to that they've been overpaying by like 70 or 80 grand every year, or even like over 100 grand. It's like, that's so much money to just throw away.
It's crazy.
If you put that back into your business, it's even more money. So
And
Definitely truth to that.
I don't want to blast, a company that handles some things on a basic level. I don't want to mention any names, but there are lots of companies out there that say they do, taxes and business strategy and things like that for companies out there, and they don't. They just basically file some of the most basic things ever. There's no strategy involved at all. It's just tax, right? And so they know how to make sure you pay, but not know how you can, really understand the system well enough to pay less or none, depending on what you're doing with your money, and then also share ideas on how to pay less. Right? I've
Yeah.
got no problem paying into the system, but I want to pay my share, not more than my share. Right?
I have a problem. It goes to
I know, you know what I
Somalia
mean.
daycare centers. Just kidding.
What do you mean?
I did a post
That's
the other day.
when you
The
hear that kind of story, that's a bunch of that makes you really aggravated. Yeah.
leering centers.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now you've
That's
helped.
horrible.
Yeah,
Moving
we're
along.
gonna shift.
Yeah, good idea.
All right, you've helped a lot of leaders reclaim their time, including myself. What's a moment where you saw someone truly start to live more because they built the right team or the right systems, or just gained clarity?
Yeah. Well, once they got a very clear vision, I'm going to go back to that. We're going to keep beating that like a dead horse because it's just you cannot do anything without that.
Yeah,
I will not move forward with a client that doesn't have that, and I will be glad to help them do that. You know what I mean? But when that's clear, then we really understand, okay, what are you trying to accomplish? And when we can get somebody to focus on one thing instead of chasing every little bright light that comes around, then, we know we're heading in the right direction. There's so much like there's clusters everywhere. There's clutter in our minds. We're trying to, keep it clear. We chase after every little bit of money that we can get at the very beginning, sometimes even after we've been in business for a long time. I see that quite a bit with business owners as well. They create things that they don't have in order to satisfy a customer because they can't say no, or because they're chasing revenue. It could be many, many different reasons. But when I see people living the life they want to lead, spending time with their spouse, spending time with their kids, spending time with their family, doing things that they really want to do, and having a successful business that they are running, and the business is not running them, that's when I feel incredibly good. We've got hundreds and hundreds of stories of clients that have done that, over the years, and it just makes such a big difference, in their lives. I know a lot of people that are in the world's mind would be considered incredibly successful. They've got this, they've got that, they drive this, they've got X amount number of houses, all these different things. Their business does X amount of revenue, and they are the most miserable people on the planet. And then I also know people that we've worked with that do 5 times more business than that, and they're incredibly happy and get to go to their kids' soccer games and all those different things because they've created a business that supports a lifestyle as well. Where again they run the business doesn't run them, and it's
yeah,
just really glad to see. I'm really glad to see that.
yeah.
We go from people that say I've never been able to go to a kid's soccer game to now they've never missed one, and their
That's
business is
awesome.
growing and thriving. Yeah, yeah,
That was one thing my dad did very well when we were kids. I thought having a business was easy because he never
yeah.
missed a sporting game. He went skiing all the time. And I didn't realize that he chose to wake up early. And, you kind of you design it in the way that you want it. But it's
Right.
possible to not miss out on the important things, but also have a
That's right.
successful business. So,
There's this thing where I know I've shared this with you before, but where Walt Disney, they had 2 groups of people. There were Imagineers, and then there were the engineers. And the Imagineers were like the visionaries of a company, right? They stayed in this kind of like dream state of what could be, what can we build in a park that would be so unique and so different, or in a movie that no one has ever seen it before, and people would just be awestruck by it. And the engineers were never allowed to talk to the Imagineers because the engineers would shoot that down. That's not possible. We can't do that. We've never done it before. The world has never seen it, that kind of thing. And it would go on for a very long time. So Walt said, I'm going to separate you 2 fighting kids. And then when the Imagineers are done, I'm just going to tell you what the Imagineers did. You have to create it. Stay in a room, be locked in there for months. I don't care how long it takes. They're like, how do we make a flying Dumbo? We don't know. We'll figure it out, right? Make it happen, right? And so the problem with with us as humans, we often get into the engineer mode. Well, I can't do that. That sounds like pie in the sky. I would love to go to my kids' games, but you don't know my business, Mike. You don't know my business, Melanie. So that's not going to work. And so we get in this engineer mode of that'll never happen for me, or we start figuring out a way to plan it out versus really just writing down what we want and then building the business around that. And so that's why most people need help doing that vision extraction, so they stay in that Imagineer mode and not get into the engineer mode and try to figure it out too early, where those are the constant no's. That's never going to work. You can't figure this out. You don't know anybody that does it like that. The most successful people are working 90 hours a week and there's no options. That kind of thing. And so, having that's one of the things we've gotten really good at over the years, is helping you separate your mind into two separate categories for a little while.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, how does your work at Humanlytics ultimately impact families and not just businesses?
Well, very similar to kind of what we just, had spoken about. We want to make sure that the personal vision for you is just as strong as your business vision. Again, we will not work with you until both are completed, and we'll walk you through. We hold your hand during that entire process. And we ask you to write a very clear vision for every area of your life, from personal finances to your relationships with friends, to the fun and entertainment that you guys, go out on, to your relationship with your spouse or significant other, all kinds of different things that, that we look at. And we kind of write a mission statement for each one of those. And then we start the engineering piece of how do we make that happen? But you'll have a very clear vision for all aspects of your life and all aspects of your vision, so that we can live those out, so that those kind of wheels kind of like roll cleanly and smoothly. So you're not bouncing down the road and losing people out of your car on the way. That kind of
that wheel of life exercise, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's
Cool.
and some people think, well, that's kind of dumb. Sometimes people kind of think that, and then they get through it and they go, well, that was harder than I thought, because I just don't put enough emphasis on those things.
Yeah.
They kind of happen by accident, not by purpose.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And it's amazing how much of life just comes at you and you're just reactive to it if you don't slow down to be intentional. It's
That's
so
right.
easy to let that happen.
That's right.
All right.
That's how the chaos starts in your business too, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
For
know,
sure.
there's no
And
clarity.
I've noticed too, if you don't have that clarity at the beginning, then you're just scaling chaos rather than scaling something that's great.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Scaling headaches.
Right. Yeah. Congratulations. You did it.
Yeah.
You're at 2 million and you're going into the psych ward because you're losing your mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. We're going to move into some rapid fire
Okay.
clip worthy wisdom. You ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, one leadership belief every business owner must unlearn.
That they need to surround themselves with, they need to unlearn, or they need to learn.
Unlearn. Or you could do learn. Whatever.
Okay. So what they need to unlearn is that they don't need to know every single thing in the business, that they actually can surround themselves with people that know what they're doing. As long as the vision is clear, they can have 15 people on the team all working part-time, driving the business 20 times bigger than what they're currently doing right now.
All right.
And they think of people as a business expense often, not as a investment, which is a big mistake.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, one task every CEO should stop doing themselves immediately.
The things that are not by their initials, on the little checklist we did earlier, will, skill, capacity, they should stop doing those things immediately and find somebody who can. They're wasting their time doing stuff that does not matter, and it's not driving business. 9 times out of 10, those things are not driving business, but they're needed to support the business.
Now, what if you have, this is a side note outside of the rapid fire. If you have most of the stuff on that list that you do is not what you want.
Yeah.
And what if it's 10 different roles? Do you just do one at a time over time or prioritize it?
Yes. So depending on, we want you to scale properly, right? So we might only take one, section of tasks away from you in the very beginning and assign that out to somebody at maybe 12 hours a week. Great question. And then you might have to have a few different hats on, but we're going to start with the thing that's going to impact your business the most. But it's also the things you don't want to do yourself. And so we'll slowly start taking those hats off your head, slowly but slowly. And then over the year or two, you should be down to only the things you initially put your initials on. But
Oh,
you just having the things that you like doing the least off of your checklist, you'll start to feel your energy increasing, and you'll start to feel better at work. You'll start to feel like you're being more productive instantly because you're not dreading the things you hate.
yeah. We actually take that a step further, and I'll do that with my team as well. That's part of their career
Yes.
audit, is
Yep.
I have them do all their tasks, because then I can see what's draining them, and can we delegate that to somebody else that,
Right.
loves it.
That's right. Yeah, 100%. When I first started, we were working with a really small company, had 6 people in it, and they really got freaked out because they were all in the wrong roles after we did a full assessment of the
Oh, no.
jobs. One was in the right role, that was the visionary or business owner. The other 5 were not. So I said, "Look," I said, "we need to rotate these roles based on what I'm seeing here, the resumes, all the PI data, everything else." And the owner said, her name is Christina. He says, "Are you sure? Like, this is gonna freak people out." I said, "Yeah, it could, but we're gonna go through and we're gonna explain everything in detail and why we're doing it for them and not to them." And she said, "Okay, all right, listen, I trust you because our business is chaotic with only 6 people and we need to get it right." So we rotated 5 people out. This was 7.5 years ago. We rotated 5 people into new roles, and
Wow.
all 5 are still there today, and they have about 65 employees now. All 5 of them are still there, but 1 only because it needed to be live. It could not be a remote role, and her husband got transferred. That's the only reason she left.
That's
And
pretty
there was
incredible, actually.
it really is, yeah. So we held their hand for quite some time because they were very nervous. They thought it was a punishment. So we explained over and over to them, "Hey, you're going to love this because we feel it lines up with your drives and how you like
Yeah.
to do business." So we explained all that to them. We did an event one day with them where we kind of just showed them the data that we were looking at to back that up, and they loved it. Everybody was praising their new roles in about 3 weeks. It took some time to get used to, but about 3 weeks.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. What's more dangerous, not hiring soon enough or hiring the wrong person?
Well, definitely, not hiring the right person.
Okay.
So, there's some, everybody thinks of that as a little bit differently, but I would rather, if the business is plugging along, even if things are chaotic, just take another week or 2 to find the right person and interview correctly, because your opening statement is so true. It's 20 to 30% of a person's annual income is lost if they've worked for you for several months. You've got all that lost productivity and they're the wrong person. And then you've got to wait another month or 6 weeks to find the right person, after doing all the interviews and posting the job and all that kind of stuff. So just wait and get the right person up front. You've been doing okay, barely. You've been living barely
Yeah.
without having that person. So get the right person in. It's better to make better to fill, with the right person than just, say, "Hey, I did it in an hour." Aren't you proud of me, Mike? No, I'm not. The person's horrible. They don't fit the role at all.
Yep.
And they're
Yeah.
miserable. So they start talking bad about the company.
And the cultural hit that it can take on the company can take a very long time to heal, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's right. Then you get an owner that says, "Well, that was tough. It took me a while to kind of fill that position." And, they filled it in 2 weeks or whatever. So they
Yeah.
think, "I don't want to do that anymore." So they just put up with somebody that's mediocre. And now you've got your elevated top tier A performers starting to do one of 2 things. They're either dipping to mediocrity, because they're the other person's getting away with it, or they leave because there's no accountability.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they feel like they're doing the job of 2 people when one person's doing the job of half.
Hmm. What's the difference between being busy and being effective?
Busy work does not lead to anywhere, right? So we often say, "Okay, what did you accomplish today?" "Well, here's what I did. I didn't ask you what you did. I said, what did you actually accomplish today? What did you do to actually drive business and drive revenue into your company?" "Well, I previewed marketing. I did this. I did that." "Okay, great. None of that drove business today because the marketing is not even out. And why are you looking at every bit of every single thing when you've got a marketing person, right?
Yeah.
Where's the lack of trust coming from? What's happening here?" So, do not ever think that busyness equals productivity or effectiveness to drive business. Do not think that.
All right, one last rapid fire. What's something
Okay.
most business owners think they want, but they don't actually need?
A $500 million business. So most people have a vision to live a very comfortable life and have some freedom to kind of do the things that they want to do when they want to do it. So again, they get advice from people who don't know their vision, and they start scaling incredibly large companies, and then they're stuck with this mega machine that they don't like, or they're not making any money and they've got a mega machine full of payroll and full of everything else. So they need to generate 50, 100, 200 grand a month to break even, which is a worse nightmare than anything, because now you're spinning your wheels in something you hate. Even for somebody that only wanted to make 20 grand a month, now they got to make 30 grand just to pay their bills. It's a complete disaster, and they actually are more stressed. Their wheel of life is way out of whack. Their spouse wants to leave them. Their kids don't know them. It's a horrible thing. So you don't need to be the big dog in every category just because big dogs in categories.
Yeah.
Look at everything. Look at their life. Look at their business. Look at how they're they are with their family. Look at everything before you find a mentor.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, thank you for sharing how just all the insights that you've shared with me over the years and how much it's helped me. But just how vision, leadership, hiring the right way doesn't just grow companies, it gives people their lives back. I know that a lot of the stuff that you've given me has given a lot of clarity to myself, and it's given a lot of my life back. So I know that if our listener decides to implement the strategies or connect with you, then I know that they're going to get value out of that. So if you are wanting to connect with Mike, I highly, highly recommend checking out Humanlytics team and emailing them at support@humanlyticsteam.com. I'll put that in the bio. I'll put that in the notes so you guys can grab that email and connect with Mike and get, touch base with him, see what he can do to help you. I know hiring, it's been great, but also just leadership stuff. He has a lot of great information and knowledge on that. So
thank you.
Yeah. Their approach helps you get the right people in the right seats so your business supports your life, not the other way around. That's what we're here for, is to live more, not to live less. So don't stop here. The next episode is going to help you create more of the life you love, more margin, more clarity, and insight into how you can pull yourself out of your business, but also just gain clarity so that you know what you're building is going to serve you instead of kill you. All right. See you there. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd ask that you leave a quick and honest review to help more business owners find the show.